Speaking of poor advice, bad decisions, one of the government's budget announcements was to give people access to 2 months' worth of long-term medicines on a single script. Now, it was billed as a convenience measure to save people regularly who take the same medication from regularly having to visit the pharmacy every month. Now, fair enough. We should, keep away from the pharmacist if we can, make it easier on people. When it was sold to me like that, I have to admit, I thought it was a good idea too. But having been off sick last week, and I've heard more about the impact of this change when I went to a chemist and picked up a script, I can tell you now it's a lot more about cutting spending than actually helping patients. And the group penalised by Labor's budget in this move is in fact your local pharmacy. You see, every time a pharmacist fills a script under the PBS, there's a dispensing fee paid to the pharmacist by the government. This change means that the government now only pays 6 dispensing fees rather than 12 to your pharmacy for something you take every month. A new report by the Office of Impact Analysis within the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet says that this change will cost the nearly 6,000 community pharmacies around Australia, on average, $158,000 each per annum. As well, said the report, the government's change, quote, would have benefited from more recent consultations on potential stakeholder impacts, particularly for small businesses and pharmacies in rural and remote areas. All up, even the government's own officials say that this particular measure fell short of good practice. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, according to Anthony Tassoni, the president of the Pharmacy Guild in Victoria. He says that the government's budget announcement actually strips $3.5 billion out of your local pharmacy over the forward estimate, so over the next 4 years. The government, says Katie Gallagher, the minister, no. Any savings we make, she says, we're going to reinvest them in pharmacies. But that's not right, says Tassoni, and here's why Tassoni's right. The $1.4 billion the government says it's getting in savings, well, it's not going to pharmacies. Instead, if you look at the budget papers, it's just over $110 million to provide electronic prescription delivery infrastructure and services. That's where the government says the savings are going. Well, that's the government's own digital health infrastructure. That's not money going to a pharmacy. What else? Where else will the savings go? Well, they're telling us $10 million to the Therapeutic Goods Administration, that's the TGA, to assist medicine sponsors repurpose targeted medicines by expanding their approval for use in Australia. Now, that's gobbledygook, but that's not money again for community pharmacies. This is just funding the health bureaucracy the government should have to do anyway from its own bottom line. And finally, there's a whopping $370 million from taxpayers for opioid replacement therapy. Now, again, that's not money for community pharmacy, that's money for addicts. And it's transferring what used to be paid for by the states and territories to the federal taxpayer. Now, if you want to check all of this out, how about you do what I did? Next time you're at the chemist, ask your local pharmacist, do you have a view about the federal budget? What was the takeout for pharmacy? And I guarantee you'll learn more in 5 minutes talking to your pharmacist than you will from any minister or briefing paper. Pharmacies open long hours and offer good service. Now, for many health problems, it's much easier to talk to your local pharmacist than get in to see your local GP. And given the fact that cost of living is biting families and older Australians in particular, well, I reckon our pharmacies are a health lifeline. But these budget changes will only make the job of pharmacy harder, and inevitably it'll lead to higher prices, or as some pharmacists have said to me, they're going to have to let staff go. Now, a smart government would have talked to pharmacy first before making these decisions, perhaps giving them a slightly higher dispensing fee for a 2-month script. But this is a good example of how so much that government announces is not quite what it seems. I mean, it fooled me. Thank God I talked to my pharmacist. I just hope the opposition is also talking to their pharmacist.